This video is brought to you by the lovely guys over at Robotoys. For all your Hasbro, Takara, third-party and knockoff desires, Robotoys has you covered. For 10% off, use the code DrLock 10% off at the checkout. The code has unlimited uses, so go for it. Now on to today's diagnosis. Hang on a second, this seems awfully familiar. Ah yes, this is where I filmed my last night Dark of the Moon Optimus Prime review. Although I was out in the garage over there, and this time it's a much better day, out in this lovely, lovely scenery. It really is a rather nice place. Thought since it was Christmas again, I would do a throwback, and it seems to be working out quite well. Of course, this time I won't be running off to New Zealand because I haven't stolen anything this time. Or have I? Unfortunately, this time I can't really complain about the huge list of Christmas songs that are getting on my nerves, because last time I did that, I got a copyright strike and had to re-upload the damn thing. Yeah, thanks YouTube for screwing me over again. 1 year on and I am still salty. It's pretty obvious that Iron Factory has been hammering in Legends figure after Legends figure constantly, and all of them have actually been really brilliant. Well, maybe a couple were a bit of miss, but they all seemed really, really good. And then they announced a Bruticus, and I got concerned, and you probably know why. Of course, long-time reviewers will remember that I reviewed DX9 Hulky back in the day, and he was pretty disappointing, and I was concerned that Iron Factory would be going through a lot of the same issues. Legends Combiners are still a very novel concept, or they were back then, and when Iron Factory started teasing the robot modes, I thought the robot modes look really, really good, but how are they going to make that combined mode nice and solid? So, does this suffer the same fate as the poorly received DX9 Hulky? Well, to answer that, greetings Cybertronians, I'm DrLockdown, and today's diagnosis pertains to Iron Factory's Bruticus, also known as War Giant. So these sets were all released in 2-packs, and I'm not quite sure which came out first and which ones followed, so for the sake of simplicity I will go into the order of which I received them. It also has the upside of putting some distance between the first and second transformation montages. Yes, this review won't have 2 montages, but 3. Oh, the horror! Right off the bat, you can tell that there's something different about these alt modes when compared to previous Iron Factory releases. Many earlier figures were somewhat lackluster in the alt mode department, and to many that was an intense turn-off. I even know people in real life who specifically prefer DX9's Legends figures because of the alien vehicle modes that Iron Factory makes. Not that it's done for laziness, because at the time these were the IDW designs that they were trying to emulate. That said, they appear to have listened to fan complaints and have slowly been making their alternate modes more grounded. Onslaught transforms into an elongated murder tanker, and this is probably one of the best alt modes I've seen on a Legends Transformer to date. It's surprising how cohesive this thing is, given what it has to achieve later on. Granted, it's a sort of glorified rectangular prism, but the sculpted detail goes far beyond anything Iron Factory has done before, even outdoing the other members of the set. It is a slight shame that there isn't a lot of paint to pick it out, but the colours of this thing are so gorgeous, and hey, they have to save some paint for the combined mode. The cannons on top, which are to become Bruticus' backpack in combined mode, make a statement that oddly drowns out the smaller cannons that sit on Onslaught's back in robot mode. 4 cannons might seem a bit overkill, but hey, you can take his gun and make it a 5th. Okay, weapon storage is kind of weak. The center connection port doesn't hold it properly and the ones on the side just look off. You can leave it off to the side though, just like a normal person. If I had to list some flaws, it would mainly be the visible hands on the back, which can be easily ignored, and the blue they used on the windows. They're all painted, but using a darker turquoise on a lighter turquoise on a turquoise body makes them seem a little indistinct. A darker shade would have greatly benefited it. Size-wise, he's a bit of a big one, but he still sits firmly into the modern Legends convention of size. This doesn't feel overly big like the Mech Fans Toys offerings, and I think it's to do with the mechanical detail. Want to make him look even more dangerous? Why not add a huge murder trailer that combines from all the combiner kibble? Yes, it is a parts-forming combiner, but personally this kind of parts-forming isn't an issue for me, and the end result is well worth it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Onward to trailer mode!
Alrighty, so to armor this guy up, the first thing you want to do is take the waist module, unhinge it, turn it like so, and then these parts can fold down like so, and you get this little part here, and you have 2 slots here, 2 pegs there, slots into there. Quite simple. Next thing you want to do is combine these two. You need to make sure that this is like this, or flat. It comes like that out of the box, but in order to combine with the robot mode, that ends up going like that. This needs to be completely out of the box. Also, the wheels need to be fully flipped down. That can just clip on right there straight away, but it's much easier to get this on first. Make sure that the robot head torso part, you've got the these parts back and this part here. You also need to make sure the head's just a little bit angled in so that you can just slide it this part will peg into these two holes here, like so, and then there are 2 pegs here and 2 slots in the torso, and that will all lock up. Once that's all locked up, it forms a very nice solid truck bed, and these fold down to finish the thing. Surprisingly, it's not this peg that pegs into there, it's this peg that pegs into the top there. I know it seems a bit odd, but trust me, it just works. And then you're starting to get a truck bed, but it's not quite there yet. First thing you want to do here is take the feet, make sure these bits are out, because that will be required for the rocket pods later. You need to make sure the wheels are out as well. In robot mode, in combined mode, they're like that, so make sure the wheels are out like so. Combine the feet, of course make sure that's like that. 2 pegs here, 2 slots under here, fits together very easily. It may look a little weird, but the hands need to be oriented like this. Knuckles curled and the thumb flipped back like that. From here you can slot one into one rocket pod, and after realizing that one got stuck under it, you need to make sure the other hand is oriented the same way, and it slots in the same way. I don't know why this one's a bit harder. Maybe it just needs to be a little bit further out. And from there, boom. This one's not as solid a connection, it seems, but ah well, it does the trick. From here you take these 2, peg here, slot here, peg them together. They're surprisingly toleranced well, in spite of being fully painted. From there you've got the 2 5mm pegs and the 2 5mm ports, and they click together. That's not toleranced as well, but it works well enough. And you've got this huge murder weapon on the back of Onslaught. And oh my, that is something to behold. Like, I don't really have a separate size comparison section, but just to get an idea. Cliff Jumper, Power of the Prime's Tailgate, Titan's Return Wheelie, and Crumbs. Like, Jesus, that is huge for a Legends figure. I know I was saying that Springer from McFan's Toys was a bit too big for a Legends figure, but I feel that the scale implied here definitely makes it work much better.
Okay, I'm gonna be honest, I was rather excited for this trailer, but the end result is kind of underwhelming. Compared to the well-defined corners and edges of the main event, this add-on just feels messy. It's not completely terrible though. I appreciate that it keeps all the parts together, and there's actually dedicated grooves for Blastoff to sit in there quite snugly, albeit a little far forward. I do think it looks better with Blastoff on display there, as it seems more purposeful. Before I move on though, I do want to mention that this figure also comes with a bonus Combiner Hunter RC figure to do battle with. I already have a review of her up, but what I do need to touch on again is that this bonus figure is likely a first run exclusive, and this pack retails for about $100. Australian, that is. With RC, I can kinda justify the price, because you're getting an incredibly complex Legends figure, and a bunch of extra Combiner parts, and a small Legion figure as well. But if it's similar to how they did the Ultimate Commander, where the second run of the figure will retail for the same price but just not include the RC, I just don't think it's worth it. This won't affect the final score of the Combiner, but it is something to keep in mind. And for all I know, this might not come to fruition. At the time of recording, and likely at the time of uploading, I know I'm pretty late already, but whatever, the second run hasn't been announced yet, so we don't know for sure. As of right now, we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, moving on to the leg elements, Brawl and Swindle are less impressive. Don't get me wrong, they're pretty cool, especially Swindle, but it's hard to top Onslaught. Swindle's car mode is incredibly compact, and channels a lot of the animated version quite heavily. It's not the cleanest of alt modes, with a lot of scrappy sections that don't line up, but I think the rails on the roof tied together enough to the point where I don't really mind that much. There's a decent amount of paint all around, including all of the windows, wheels, and surprisingly the tail lights. It's a shame that the thighs are somewhat visible, but given the combining nature, the engineering can't be too crazy. One part I'm a little disappointed though is the headlights. On my copy they missed one. I don't think it's a common issue, as the stock photography and fan images are fine, but it is something that bugs me a little. After this review, I'll probably fix it myself. If you're feeling this alt mode isn't armoured up enough, he does come with a tiny pea shooter. It's fine. But we all know this isn't the main event. Like most Swindles before him, he comes with a big f***off cannon. It's slightly more reserved than some of his other incarnations, but it gets the job done, and it does well. The connection might not be the best thanks to some clearance issues, but it's a fun time either way. Brawl is far more solid as an alt mode, with a lovely balance of smooth panels and mechanical detail, but I can't help but feel he's a little more boring than his boxmate. I understand that he's going for a very specific style of tank, and for what he's trying to achieve is doing it well, but there's not much paint to break it up.
Also, there really should have been more mechanical detail on this thing. If you have a dark tank, detail is what brings it to life. By sticking the guns on the 5mm ports on the back, the alt mode does look a little better, but it's not really enough to make me love this figure. He also has an issue of these unsightly gaps in the front section, so there's that. And in case you're wondering, yes, the turret is articulated, but it's kind of weird. It's on two separate 5mm pegs with an extra hinge. I get what they're going for, but it makes posing him super weird. It's better than some tank formers though, as at the very least it has rotation, unlike Combiner Wars Brawl. Moving on to the two arms, whom are also packaged together, Blastoff is fine. His colours are lovely and the design is far more interesting and dynamic than the Unite Warriors counterpart, although I guess with the re-release on Amazon I could also call it the Combiner Wars counterpart, but even then it's just sort of a space oblong with some shuttle parts added to the sides. A space shuttle, when done right, can look amazing, but the way they've done this design just doesn't cut it. I will say it's nice that they added landing gear, 4 of them for some reason, but unfortunately most of the time this will remain muted. See, he comes with these two guns that peg under the wings, and if you lose them the entire combined mode is ruined. They peg in and keep the arm mode from wobbling around. This means it's safer to keep them pegged into the wings at all times, just to be 100% safe. This means you'll never be able to use the landing gear either, which in itself isn't much of an issue, but it is something to note. Fortunately, these are also the method that Blastoff uses to line up with Onslaught's trailer. It's not super solid, but it doesn't wobble around, so overall it's a nice touch. He also comes with a gun, but it doesn't peg in properly at the top, so it's pretty much worthless in this mode. Finally, we have Vortex. From a conceptual standpoint, he's a little derpy. However, personally, I enjoy him quite a lot. There's a lot he's got going on, as there is with any helicopter that combines to form a Gestalt, but I kinda like how shameless he is. The bluish grey they use is somewhat striking, and the highlights on the windows end up popping way more than you'd think they would. There are a lot of small flaws though. Yes, I can forgive the arms being visible for the size, but the front section falling off can't be too easily ignored. Also, this blade part did not need these hinges, it just makes everything seem annoying. These things are always going to be an issue on a combining copter former though. Since it's such an odd choice of vehicle, incorporating the combining aspect will always leave something amiss. It's not as bad as other alt modes, such as motorcycles, but it's one of the things you just have to accept as fact, such as Travis Knight not returning to make any more Transformers films. Anime eventually has to be paid for, and Die Hard will always be, and has always been, a Christmas movie.
Yep, and big class Frozen as a Xmas movie. Idiots, I tell ya.
It's every bit as much of a Christmas movie as Eyes Wide Shut.
Don't forget that not everyone celebrates Christmas. Just saying.
Yes, they classify Wizard of Oz as a Christmas movie.
Idol. The sound of music and Bolsardo posar so una Christmas movie que te bon films and Star Wars, tardo es mama que tem Christmas films.
Iam sur te roi dialogue, I have a machine gun now.
Ooh, that's more relevant to pagan Yule. But then again, so is most stuff that people think is Christmas, but really isn't.
I prefer the Japanese movie version die with difficulty.
Ben noi piesenet. Tuve a Christmas movie terenevs tuve olidai mensaje. Simply setting a film in December doesn't qualify.
Guys, it was supposed to be a joke. I wasn't actually being serious. You don't have to take this so seriously. Also, there's no phone in here, it's just a prop.
Also, he can store the weapons on his side, which is fine, I guess. Placing these guys together doesn't quite have the same effect as the Constructicons, perhaps because the vehicle choice is more stylized, but it's still a fun set to have in this mode. There's a lot more to be gained in the other two modes though, so onward to victory! Transformation on these guys, for as complex as the engineering needs to be for a combiner, which is surprisingly not very, leads to a not very complex transformation overall. Of course, on Onslaught you need to get rid of Blastoff first, then you need to come around here, get rid of the huge murder trailer, and then also, whilst you're at it, get rid of this huge gun pack here. We're not going to be needing this at all for the transformation. From here, Onslaught's pretty simple. First thing you want to do is untab these panels from the side. You just get that out of there, and around, this out of here, and around. Same on this side, out, and out. From here, the back section unhinges and folds down on the hinge and the ball joint. You can come around here, starting to get a robot. Untab the legs, come around here, unfold these bits here. You sort of rotate them down, and like that. You give them a bit of a bend, which allows you to unhitch them and move them down. Once that's done, you can bring out the feet, like so. Come around to the back, unhook these parts. Don't put them all the way for the combined mode, just a little bit out so that it gets a heel spur. Basically just fold this section up. You can then bring the arms all the way up, rotate the arms down, come around to the front, rotate the fists into place, untab the chest, bring the head up, bring that up, and then the head pops into place properly. And oh boy, that's a cool onslaught. The only thing left to do is to give him his gun, which is a pretty huge gun actually. That's actually a pretty cool design, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Swindle's quite simple. You need to unpeg the weapons, and then you unpeg the roof, which is a bit disappointing. It just kind of comes undone from those parts there, and that might untab everything, as you can see right there. I'm a bit disappointed about this because it's not weapon parts forming, it's just, oh, just take off a part of the alt mode and do nothing with it later. I mean, I guess you can use it as a bit of a battering weapon later on, but come on, that's a bit lazy. Now I'm just going to pretend that that whole assembly removal didn't unpeg everything up here. I'm just going to pretend it stayed in the whole time. First thing you want to do is untab these side bits. Then you can get these bits up and into the feet. Take the front section, unpeg it from the front, which allows you to move it back a bit. Come around here, untab the arms and rotate them up just a wee bit. That allows you to rotate the entire leg section down. From here you can take the feet, they're on a double hinge and they lock into place there, and they undo, and you got your ankle tilts there as normal. These parts need to be fully down here. The hands, so the lower arm sort of unpeg and move back like that, and the fists don't need to be rotated. You come around to the back and it seems a bit difficult, but what you need to do first is make sure that's fully up, then that'll allow you to move the back just a little bit further in, which works quite well. Then last but not least, the head reveal. And a cracking head sculpt. Oof, that's a good robot mode. The only real thing he needs is his huge cannon. I haven't found a way to actually put it on his shoulder, but it does do the whole bazooka thing as per usual. And of course you've got his little pea shooter as well. Works fine. Just fine. Brawl's a little bit disappointing. I'm just going to take this part off because this assembly is very, very confusing. But what you're going to want to do is just rotate that around and rotate that for later, and then you can leave that to the side and bring it back later. Guns, disassemble. From here, first things first, get these tread pieces up, bring the feet down like so, pull the heels out somehow. I hate it when companies are just like, oh, make the heel spurs the hardest part of the figure. From here you can untab the arms out from there. The torso comes and locks into place. Then you can bring the arms down. These parts fold to the front, and that will allow you to rotate these bits back. This part's a little bit annoying. You rotate the waist, and to get this out of the assembly, you need to push down a bit. Down, and then it'll click out. So push down, you'll even hear that one on clicking from there, and then it folds out. There's a special trick to it. I don't know why they made it so difficult, but it is very annoying. They really should have done that better. Of course, if that's been staying on the entire time, it will be there anyway, but otherwise you can just peg it right on. Oh, and I almost forgot. The feet rotate around, and that allows him to stand decently, as opposed to wibbly wobbly. On the home stretch now, you've got to be very careful with blast off, and I'll get into why later on. But the first thing you want to do is bring this backpack out. You can get these arms out of the way, unpeg the wings and bring them a little bit down. The wings will then fold back. If you keep these out of the way, these can fold fully down, and these can come back. On the feet, fold down and around, like so. Unhinge these. Do a whole Combiner Wars thing, but be very careful where you pull from. Always pull from the thighs, never pull from the waist. It's a very bad idea, and again, I'll explain why later. These will peg into the thighs, and that'll undo itself. Fold the arms down, unhinge these side pieces here. Just like the G1 toy, fold the hands around. I do have the G1 toy, but I can't seem to find it at the moment. You bring the head up on this hinge, and it clicks into place, and you got a nice blast off. Looks pretty cool. And finally, bearing no resemblance to his G1 toy, first thing you want to do is unpeg this. Parts forming. Thank God it's actually a weapon. That's a pretty genius use of the weapon. I usually take this off and leave it to the side. That can also become a weapon as well. You bring this whole section to the back there, and you're already starting to see a robot. Undo these sections here. You have to actually unpeg them to move them down for some reason. I'm not sure why. It's a very, very odd decision. Eventually you get the legs down, and of course you close these up. At the back here, these feet fold down, which are a rather nice touch. The cannons fold forward. The arms unpeg and fold down, like so. And then you can have him hold that blade there. And of course his gun here. And there we are. Vortex, looking pretty spiffy.
Starting with the big man himself, Onslaught is fucking gorgeous. The colour combination they went for is incredibly appealing, and the paintwork isn't too shabby either. All you really have to do is get this guy into an A stance, and he immediately exudes authority. The combination of the high shoulders and the thick thighs work amazingly, and despite being a torso bot, he's virtually got no kibble. You could complain about the panels on the shoulders, but personally I don't care too much. The cannons on the back could be a little better though. Maybe the heel spurs could be a bit better cosmetically too. They're functional, but they don't look that great. One thing I do commend though is the head sculpt. It's a little more round than your standard Onslaught affair, but the visor pierces through and the effect is awesome. The articulation is pretty alright too. The head is on a ball joint, the arms have upward hinges and ball joints, and in spite of the kibble, the shoulders do have bicep swivels that work unhindered. He also has double jointed elbows, wrist swivels, and a waist swivel. The hips ratchet forward with a simple hinge outwards. Seems like an odd choice initially, but it benefits the combined mode later on. The knees have almost 90, and the front portion of the feet are on ball joints. You'd think they'd only be cosmetic, but they do help a little bit in keeping him stable. Overall, for a Legends figure, he's almost perfect in his articulation. Typically, torso bots get shafted the most, but in this set, he's a clear winner, just like everyone else. Parts forming aside, Swindle has also got an incredibly dynamic sculpt. The colours on display are as iconic as ever, and the smirk on his head sculpt is exquisite. The proportions are perfect, and then oh shit, kibble! You know what? I don't actually mind this, and you know why? This actually creates a height difference between him and Brawl, which is something no combiner up until now has done. Logically, they would be different sizes, and at a Legend scale, this is the only way they could have done it. Every other Bruticus on the market has these two depicted at the same size, so the fact that Iron Factory went above and beyond to do something so comic-specific is awe-inspiring. With that said though, I do think the shoulder kibble could have been incorporated better. It makes transforming him a pain, and it is pretty unsightly, especially with the crazy backpack. Adding a little more junk to his back wouldn't have been that bad. Articulation is pretty good. His head is ball jointed with a hinge that doesn't really add much. The shoulders are basically identical to Onslaught, but he does have a hinge and a ball joint on his elbows to facilitate a double joint, and a bicep swivel as opposed to just a proper bicep swivel and a double joint. Works fine. He retains the waist swivel, and he has regular ball joints and thigh swivels at the hip. The knees basically work unhampered thanks to transformation, and he has an inbuilt ankle tilt. Using the double hinges for transformation, you can also move a few things out of the way on the feet to make posing easier. Surprisingly, it's not that unsightly. In spite of being the hardest to transform out of the group, Brawl is surprisingly the least interesting. It's hard to make a big lumbering brute boring, as proven with Onslaught, but again, the mechanical detail on Brawl is just too simple for my tastes. For starters, the combiner ratchet is completely visible from the front. It shouldn't bother me, but for some reason it really does. From the front, I enjoy the way the treads fold down over the shoulders, but over on the back they become messy yet hollow at the same time. Whilst we're here, I do enjoy the way the turret folds in on itself to form a cohesive backpack, but the legs are a little trash from this angle. Don't even bother calling Danny DeVito here, it's not worth it.
Although garbage disposers differ from model to model, they all operate on similar principles.
I will say this though, the head sculpt is far more dynamic than the Combiner Wars version. In fact, is basically better than the Combiner Wars version in every way. Congrats, I guess? Articulation is good, but not great. Head is again on a ball joint, and the shoulders are on a fixed ball joint this time. He has a bicep swivel, but the kibble can get in the way at times. He also comes with a double jointed elbow and a wrist swivel. Waist swivel works as normal, as do the ball joints at the hips and the thigh swivel. His legs only really get 90, and sadly the ball joints on the feet don't do shit. For a Legends figure it's fine, but compared to the others of the set, it's a little disappointing. Blastoff may be a bit of a kibbly mess from certain angles, but he wears this kibble like a badge of honor, so I can't really fault him for it. The robot mode is essentially what the Unite Warriors version should have been if it weren't, well, complete garbage. The head sculpt is a little indistinct when compared to Onslaught's, but it still packs a lot of expression. The several layers of sculpting and paint on his chest are incredibly awesome, and the legs are fine, just fine. The panelling's a little messy, unfortunately, but he's got a dynamic sculpt, so it doesn't really matter. Just a few gripes. The backpack is a little odd, with a transparent purple on show. Not bad, just odd. Secondly, the hands. I get that this is a nod to the G1 toy, but it doesn't look very good. And finally, the abdomen. This is actually the only real issue I have with the entire set. Everything else can just be written off as a nitpick. It's the only thing that goes from slight nitpick to genuine concern. The way this was assembled has led to some pretty bad stress marks, and I've heard of horror stories of that mushroom peg breaking down under all the stress. It's simply that way due to transformation, and unfortunately there's no fix for it. I'm almost scared to handle this toy because eventually this thing is going to shatter into a million pieces. I really hope this is fixed on the Bruticus version, because if it isn't, Iron Factory has some serious explaining to do. Aside from that, articulation is solid. Ball-jointed head again, upward hinges, and ball joints for shoulders. The shoulder pads move out and allow for a bicep swivel, and a single-jointed elbow. Not great, but at least it gets beyond 90. And the wrists still swivel. Be careful with the waist swivel though, as the mushroom peg may not last. He has 2 ab crunches technically, but I won't show you the main one they use for combiner mode, as it involves putting stress on the mushroom peg. Also, yeah, ab crunch on a Legends figure. We are starting to get into god tier Legends articulation territory. Too bad it's on a ticking time bomb. The legs are standard, ball-jointed hips, thigh swivels, knees that sadly don't reach 90, but thankfully the ball-jointed feet actually work quite well. Overall, there's a lot of ups and downs, but I prefer this next to the nothingness the Brawl presented. Finally, Vortex jumps in with all the dynamic sculpting and posing of Blastoff and none of the mold issues. Right off the bat, the design is incredible. The colours convey so much style, and although comparatively he doesn't have that much paint, he's got a lot else going on, so it's perfectly fine. The head sculpt is mean, and the leg mass is clever, and unlike Blastoff, his torso isn't going to shatter into a million pieces when you try to pose him. I basically have no gripes with this figure in this mode, although there are a few oddities to bring up. The pass-forming windshield isn't bad, just odd. Same with the massive blades that become the spinning death shuriken. Again, just odd. Also, at first I thought those plates at the back folded up for no reason, but actually those are for the shoulder cannons. Actually, the script tells me not sure why, but now I really do know why. I'm going off script, hooray! Articulation is basically perfect. Ball-jointed head, hinges on the shoulders, ball joints of the shoulders, bicep swivel, double-jointed elbows, wrist swivel, waist swivel, and an ab crunch that actually works this time. 2 ab crunches. The rest is pretty standard. Ball-jointed hips, thigh swivels, and knees that are on double joints that really don't do anything, so you might as well just use one. The feet are also ball-jointed. Nice. Together these bad motherfuckers form the most badass combiner in history. Devastator might be the most iconic, Raiden might be the most desired, Menasor may be the most powerful in G1 cartoon standards, and Abominus may be the scariest, but you cannot deny the awesomeness of the Combaticons. Leah Kaiser comes close second, but his namesake brings him down.
Okay, so I am going to transform this by having everyone in vehicle mode except for Onslaught. Onslaught benefits from being in robot mode. Everyone else, just straight from vehicle mode. So first thing you want to do is take this part here with the wheels on the outside, collapse the wheels in, collapse the back part out, fold up this section. You'll notice there's 2 slots here, and there are 2 tabs here. They will slot into there. And then this part will peg into the crotch at the back there. You can then bring this front section down without bringing the rest of it there, and you've got yourself a pretty solid leg. I've already transformed the turrets to my liking. You can really do whatever you like with it, but it doesn't really matter that much. Same thing over here. You clip in the wheels, clip in the back section, unpeg. You'll notice there are dedicated tabs here and slots here, so it's the reverse, so you can't get the legs mixed up. That pegs into there. Slot pegs into the back side, and you got 2 very solid legs. You take big old Onslaught here, fold up the feet like so, fold up the back parts like so, make sure the heel spurs are all the way up, because then you can bring down the tabs that will peg into the legs. You bring the legs out, and then there's another joint that you gotta clip these in on. You need to make sure that the legs don't collapse. If they collapse, it's going to cause problems, so just at the front here, peg, peg, and there we go. You can then start tabbing these together, one like so, and then you can bring it forward. That works. You peg it down into there, bring that there. You've got Onslaught in some boots, some Bruticus boots. And be careful not to take that off accidentally like I did. You bring the arms like so, bring that in there, and then these will actually peg into the sides like so. Just keep them, it's a bit difficult to get them in. Just a bit, there we go. You take this connection port from the trailer, fold it in on itself, like so, and that'll peg onto the crotch plate. You got a big old tab in there that just works. Come around to the back, take this section, fold in these bits, make sure the wheels are folded back, and make sure that these tabs are out to the sides. You make sure the gun's off, and then this can peg right into the back here. Come on, there we go. Come on, there we go. Nice and solid. And now you can see Bruticus is starting to take shape. Funnily enough, this entire section in the front here is hollow in the combined mode, but it means the weight is all balanced out. What you want to do is make sure that the antenna are up, the crest is up, this part's back, these parts are out. Then this entire section tabs into the chest and on these two parts here, locking absolutely everything together. There we go. Nice and solid, and then the head just flips on that. And you've got yourself a lovely Bruticus torso. But of course you have to armor him up. So you take the gun section from the vehicle mode of Onslaught and peg that into the back there. And whilst I'm at it, I like to rotate these 90 degrees so that some of the details are a bit different. Makes him look a bit cooler, personally. What we're going to do is combine the containers like so together, just like the vehicle mode. Like that on the back side. You take blast off, take these guns off, untab these sections from here, bring them down to the side like you're transforming it into robot mode. Now this is the really dangerous part. Gently, gently get that out of there because of those stress marks there. That's what I'm really concerned about. You can then rotate that there, and it forms decent rotation. Eventually, rotate, take this peg, rotate it 90 degrees, and that will peg solidly into there. It's a real solid motherfucker. These two guns then come together, like so. This part folds out. You then come to the side here, and this is actually supposed to slot into there, and then along the back there. One arm left. I'm just going to rotate that so that it's ready to receive the last arm. First thing you want to do is remove this part here. You then remove it even further by separating the gun part and the canopy. That'll make a lot more sense later. It's easier to get this out of the way, but we can put that back on later. It doesn't really matter. You can keep it on if you want. Then you just get this bit out and into place, just like on Blast Off, only not so scary. Bring this bit forward, take the robot mode arms, reorient them 90 degrees. They've got their own dedicated peg in there. Reorient them 90 degrees so that they've got their dedicated peg. That allows for a bit more space. Untab this. This will allow you to slot this piece in here. And then that keeps that there. It's not the most solid connection, but it does the trick in reshaping the mass there. And then you can get that solidly in there. Ooh, Bruticus is almost done. The right arm rotates here and clips under, like so. You make sure the feet are around for the correct way, back there, and that allows you to get this all the way in, like so. And then you can move them forward to cover it up. And oh boy, Bruticus is one hefty dude. Surprisingly though, we are still not done yet because we have to combine the weapons. First thing you want to do is bring this part in, bring this part back. That locks that into place. You then take Blastoff's gun, fold in the handle, fold that part there. These combine together. Brawl's guns have handles that fold in. and they clip on the sides. You get one on the side. You get Swindle's cannon, and there's a little part that folds back there, and again you fold in that. So you get one of Brawl's guns. That then pegs between Brawl's guns, and you lock the two together with the other one of Brawl's guns. Make sure you fold in the handle, and then that locks it together. Am I making any sense? Doesn't seem like I'm making much sense. Swindle's gun comes in here and locks it all together. And then you can add Vortex's guns to the side of it. And Blastoff's gun just fits at the top like a scope. And that's pretty cohesive for a weapon, actually. It's surprisingly cohesive.
Now, I am aware that some people hate combining parts forming with a passion, and I do hate parts forming under normal circumstances, but considering how several all-integrated combiners turn out in the mainline, it's hard to argue with the results. And oh boy, does Bruticus deliver on the results. The design is imposing, the detail is immaculate, the paintwork is basically flawless, the solidity is off the charts, and I'm aware that several people love their large combiners, but think about how easy it can be to topple some of them. This guy doesn't feel like 5 robots anymore. He feels like an action figure designed to look like 5 figures stuck together. Honestly, I've never seen a combiner that's looked this sexy before, aside from maybe Power of the Prime Spreader King, but even that's stretching it. There's virtually nothing wrong with this design, aside from some weird parts at the backs of the legs and some visible hands here and there. Even the weapon integration is basically perfect. Every weapon that this set comes with combines into an actually cohesive gun. I've never seen a combined weapon that's this cohesive. Most fail miserably and come across as cobbled together, but if you aren't quite happy with this configuration, the set also comes with a non-transformable Shockwave figure. I'm not sure which set this comes with, I think it's Onslaught, but it pegs into the fully articulated hands with ease. Still not your cup of tea? Why not use the actual Shockwave? Iron Factory's fully transformable Shockwave figure, sold separately, also known as Bridge Watcher, does the exact same, and it works. It really works. Some people seem to think it doesn't fit, but although it is a tad heavy, all the pegs line up and it does the job. Sure, it's selling Shockwave a little short, is way cooler in robot mode, but hey, I'll take it. Articulation's okay for a leader figure, but it's rather good for a Legends Combiner. His head is ball jointed and he has 2 hinges for each arm. Each shoulder swivels and the rest is pretty outrageous with a bicep swivel, ratcheted elbow, elbow swivel, second hinge below that swivel. This of course applies to both arms. The wrist swivel and the fingers are individually articulated, so you can basically get any hand pose. The waist has a swivel, but the kibble does limit it a bit. Everything else is pretty stock standard. Ratcheted hips, and that applies to both directions, thigh swivels, hinged knees, ankle tilts, and a toe bend. Any pose this combiner would theoretically be doing due to its size in-universe can be achieved. There's a lot to improve on, but it's already light years ahead of any other Legends combiners on the market right now. The GJD combiner and the Magic Square Menasor don't count yet, as they haven't been released as I'm uploading this. For a size comparison, it's actually the size of a small leader. This is due to the massive amounts of combiner kibble. Of course, given the importance of such a combiner, I feel we need to make a few more size comparisons. He scales quite well with the combiner hunters that he comes with, and doesn't come with. I finally got combiner hunter's Windblade a day or 2 ago. She's adorable. Now all we need is a Chromia in both colours and the set is complete. And finally, a comparison with sad Hulky. I've harped on this thing for oh so long, and I think it's time I finally put it to rest. Twice now this thing has been beaten at its own game. Once by Hasbro and Takara, and once now by Iron Factory. There's just no reason to cling to this lifeless husk anymore. When I combined Hulky for the first time, I was met with shame. But for $50 extra, when I combined War Giant, I was met with wonder and awe. Price isn't the only reason of its failure. And now that Iron Factory has proven that Legends Combiner can work, it's time we moved forward onto brighter and better things. Like that Magic Square Menasor. I'm very interested to see how that thing will work. Plus, I don't actually have a Menasor in my collection yet. And with that, we are finally done with the Legendary Transformers Marathon for this year. Will I continue it next year? Definitely, but I think I might plan things out a bit better because it has been a very big trip getting here. Don't forget my microphone broke at one point, I got sick at one point, there was a huge internet outage thanks to the huge hailstorm, and that meant I couldn't upload videos even though they were finished. Come on, Optus, can you do things a little better next time? People have work to do. I'm definitely glad I went ahead with this though, because I feel like I've tweaked my style for the videos through doing this, and I've also gained more confidence for doing videos next year. And I've got some more plans for videos next year that I can definitely deliver on, whereas in the past it's like, what do I do? But anyway, Today's sponsor for this video is RoboToys, an Australian-owned Transformers website catering to all of your Hasbro, Takara, third-party and knockoff needs. They've got some Iron Factory stuff in stock at the moment, so if you want to check them out, there will be a link in the description. And don't forget that you can use the code DrLock 10% off to get 10% off on any orders you desire. And that is an unlimited use code, so you don't have to worry about using it once and never using it again. Just go right ahead for it. And with that, I am done. I don't think I'll be working on any more videos this year except for a top list. Got some more ideas for next year, but until then, I'm just gonna go home and sleep. I'm done. This has been a really big marathon, and I am pooped.